Now we're going to do an exercise together of the waterfall method using the memory valves, because I think it wasn't that clear on the last video, and now we can understand exactly how it works. So we already know that we're going to have 4 common groups, so I'm just going to write or draw our 4 lines, and I already positioned the actuators and the valves in its initial position. So since A is starting on A plus, it is like this, and the valve is also providing air on this side, so it's as it's supposed to be, and here it's providing pressure here because it starts on B minus. Now just let me position it properly because I did. And also, like, remember to position your stuff on the right place, because you see what I just did here? It was wrong. We gotta do the pressure and the atmosphere on this side of the valve that's being used, not like it was drawn before. Okay, but that was already dealt with on the other videos. So now what I like to do is first we divide, as I explained on the last video. So until we have another actuator that is the same, we just keep it on the same common group. So here it's A, B, and then we have B again, so we split. And then B again, we split. B again, we split. And then that's it. And then we have just 4 common groups. Okay. So I think it's easier to start making the upper part. So we can just, these lines are all messy. We can just move it here, and then we can do A minus, B plus, B minus, B plus, B minus, TA plus. That's it, right? Yeah. So what I like to do is just think that it's a common line, and this line is going to have to perform these movements. So how would we do it? We would just draw the first movement, which is A minus. So the first thing is that this line is going to come out of the first line that we have, right? And then the second movement is still on this line, it's B plus. So what we have is that B plus will be triggered when this sensor is triggered, right? So we just add an SA minus sensor, and it's going to be added here on our first line also. So we can just simulate the movement on the first line. It goes, it activates A minus, it moves that valve, the actuator goes here, and it activates this sensor, which is here, and it will activate B plus. But I'm just going to introduce another thing, which is that maybe some movement, for example B plus or B minus, can be triggered by 2 different lines. It's similar to what happened on the emergency button, but what we have is, since we have 2 lines that will trigger the movement, we have to make a condition that if one of these lines is activated, it's going to do the movement. So just for not to deal with that right now, we just know that it's going to have another line. We don't know it yet, but we add an OR valve just so it's already here for when we have to deal with it. So again, every time we have a certain movement that can be activated by more than one line, more than one time, we usually need to add an OR valve so we can deal with it and the different lines and activations and the whole thing. So here what we're going to do is just add the line, and now it's activating SB plus after it triggers the first actuator to come back. So that's it. That's what we have for now. And this is our first line. And our second line, what we have is B minus. Just checking, B minus happens again. Yes, it does. So we just copy this R valve because I'm lazy. I don't want to draw it again. In paper, we're unfortunately gonna have to draw it again, but we can just do it like this here. And what we have is, we don't have to add sensors because the sensors to move lines are on the bottom part of our drawing, right? Oh my god, sorry. We move lines on the bottom part, and with there, what's happening in the sequence of a line on the upper part. This is a good way to explain it. So the first thing that's going to happen in this line is B minus. So we don't need anything. We just connect it to B minus. It's not straight, but I'm going to leave it like this because we can understand, and that's what matters. So, okay, B minus. And then on the third line, we have B plus. So it's the only movement on the third line. So also no censoring, no anything, just the way it is. I swear, what does this happen? Okay. That's it. But and then we do it like this, and this is our third line. And then our fourth line, we have the first movement B minus. So that thing, we don't need sensories because it's the first movement. That's it. It's gonna stay like this because it's okay. We can see it. We can understand what's happening. And then the second movement, it's a time delay and A plus. But since it's the second movement of the line, what we have to do, we have to add a sensor. So when B minus happens, so adding a sensor for B minus, we trigger A plus, right? And we trigger it with a temporizer. So just adding it here as B minus, but not on this line. It's on the last one, so as B minus, trigger A plus with a temporizer. I'm gonna come back with the temporizer here. Okay, so I just... Why does this keep happening? But it's like this, it's okay. So I just added our SP minus, which was already here, and the temporizer, just so it has a time delay before it activates as A plus. And it's also activated by the last line. So the upper sequence is not done because I didn't draw this line. But you got the point, right? It was supposed to be here, it's here now. Okay, so now the one of the different parts of the waterfall method is done. We just have to deal with the movements that happen inside a line, which are more than one in a sequence. And we know that when we have sequences, we need to use the sensors to activate the next movement. That's okay. Now we're gonna place our memory valve in the system. So the first thing I'm gonna do is just concatenate all the memory valves because we'll have 3, right? And I'm just gonna place them here and then connect it so it's easier to follow. So here we have our valves, and now we're just gonna start by the basic connecting them. So as I explained before, the left position of the first valve, it's connected to the first line, and then the second position is what's happening? The second position is connected to the second line because When this shifts, it's going to activate this way, so it's connected to the second line, and it's this whole valve, it's going to be deactivated by the third line. So we just keep doing that for, I hate this stuff, for the other valves. So here we had our concatenations that one activates the other, and they're connected in a waterfall, and this is also connected properly here. So it's already made, and it's gonna be like this one connected to the other pretty much always. And now what we're gonna do is this line that activates this valve that activates the third line, it's gonna be deactivated by the fourth line. So I just can put it like this here. And also another thing is, what is it activating? The third line, right? So we're gonna have something here to activate the third line. Because when it moves here, when this shifts, it's gonna have pressure through here, and it's gonna go through here and activate the third line. And that's it, and then deactivate this one. So we just first line, second line, third, fourth, and so on. If it doesn't make sense, feel free to ask, please. Still getting to know my teaching skills, which are not that good, but oh no, sorry. But I swear I'm trying. But then we just connected on the fourth line, just so we already have everything connected. And then the next step, which I think is better to do like now, is just a second, is the connection with the sensors and the less lines. Because the thing about only being able to activate the current line when the last one is on is still available. So I'm gonna add a bunch of end valves and gonna be right back. Okay, so now we have a lot of end valves. But let's go. How do we move from the first line to the second one? We need to have the first line activated, and we need B plus to happen, right? So we're gonna do the same thing as we were doing in the step-by-step method. We connect the first line to a sensor that triggers SB plus, just like that. No secret. Just doing this. Just gonna change it here to SB plus, and that's it. We didn't even suffer. We're just gonna do it like this. If it works, it's better. And that's it. Once SB plus is triggered, it reaches the signal, and if the first line is activated, there's another signal, and when they're both on, it shifts the first valve, moving to the second line. So okay, we're already able to move to the second line. And now to move from the second to the third, we're gonna do basically the same thinking, using having the second line activated and the sensor, which is the sensor B minus. But we have a thing that our B minus sensor was already used, and we cannot use the same sensor twice, because the sensor is basically a thing here in the circuit that detects the position, so we just gotta borrow the signal. So to borrow the signal of SB plus, I think actually I'm gonna move it down and then borrow it 1 second. Okay, so what I did here is I moved SB minus below, and then I add an end valve where it was, using the last line and the signal that comes from SB minus. Because when SB minus is going to be triggered, it was going to be triggered everywhere that the signal is positioned, so it doesn't matter. But what we need is that the last line is activated, and then also that SB minus is activated, so we can activate the time delay and A minus. So I just add this end valve and borrow the signal from here. It's a little confusing because there's a lot of wires, but it's basically the same thing, but instead of just making the conditioning here that the air would only go upwards into the time delay, and then to move actuator A was, if the sensor was activated, now it just moves it. Both of them are okay. So it's just a different way to do it, but we managed it. Okay, so this was to move from second line to third line. Okay, so now from third line to fourth line, we need B plus. And we already used B plus. So what we're gonna do is, again, borrow a signal. I'm gonna place it here because what we'll have is, we're gonna need, again, it's the same thing as always. We're gonna need the last line to be on, and the sensors that activate our position. So no biggie, but kind of hard. Not hard, but you'll have to think about it. And then the last line is the third line. So this is getting a mess, but it's okay. I'm just gonna move it like this and we can see it at least. So if the third line is on, and if the sensor of B plus is activated, so we just gotta borrow the signal again. And now I'm just gonna actually move this thing a little bit below so it's easier to borrow its signal. Where was it? It was here, so I just connected again, and then this thing is gonna borrow the signal just like this. Easy as it is. And we gotta remember that when we're borrowing the signal, it doesn't mean that both of the valves are going to be activated, because we have the AND valve. So if there's nothing coming from here, there won't be an output. So we don't have to worry about when B plus is triggered to move from the first to the second, because it won't move, for example, for the third to the fourth, because the third won't have pressure. So this is not a problem for us. So we adjusted here how we move from one line to another. And what happened here? Yeah, we just gotta do this. Sometimes it's hard to do it here because I was just putting a bunch of stuff and forgetting to adapt it. And now we're gonna do the actuation for the first movement. It's basically what we did for everything that we're doing here. So we need the last line to be activated, and we also need the button. And as we mentioned before, other than the button, it's also useful and proof of errors and problems during our circuit that the sensor of the last movement, which in our case is SA plus, it's also activated. So we're gonna add as a plus a button, okay, just adjusting like here. As a plus a button, and when the button and the C plus are connected and the last line is also connected, it can trigger here and move the valve to activate the first line. So I'm just going to draw the stuff that I said and then explain it again. So now I just added our button, which is for a one-time cycle, and our end valve, which makes sure that both the button and the sensor for the last movement are activated, and then it checks if the last line also has pressure, and then it can trigger the movement. And the movement, as I explained before, would be like when it shifts here, it activates line 1. Then when it shifts here, it activates line 2. When it shifts like this is line 3, and when it shifts back like this is line 4. And that would be basically our movement. And just one thing that it's important also to mention is that if we had this valve, like this end valves could be connected in different ways. For example, the last line could be connected by an end with the sensor, and the output of this end could be connected by an end with the button and then connected directly there. And it could be like an end with the last line and the button, and an end with this output and the sensor, and then the output of this end there. So they're commutable. We can change it the way they work, because we just have to make sure that everything is on. So now what we do is the conditioning for the last positions, the initial positions, and to make sure which sensors are triggered or not. So we have SA plus and SB minus. SA minus not triggered, SA plus triggered. So SB plus not, SB minus yes. And then we also shift the position, right? Because they're pressed. And that would be it for the sensors. Never forget to make sure their position is correct. I know when we're doing it like here on the tablet, it's easier because we can just shift once it's already done, and on paper it's not that easy, but we can still get the idea of the thing. So now let's just make sure that everything is happening correctly. We press this button, it shifts. There's air here. This sensor was already pressed, so there's air here. Air here meets air from the last line, which was triggered. Now it's the time to adjust stuff. So now I can adjust that the last line was triggered. So the pressure was like this. And then since the last line was triggered, this is activated and it goes and it commutes. Once it commutes, air comes out of here because there's pressure here, and then it meets here, 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 activates the first line. It's boring me. Sorry. But then it activates the first line. It does the stuff it has to do on the first line, which is go here, move the piston, and once it reaches SA minus, it activates and moves to SB plus. Once SB plus is reached, it presses here, it tries to go here, it cannot because the third line is not activated, but the first line is, so it shifts to line 2. And then the pressure comes out of here and it goes to line 2. This is also a good time to make sure that your connections are properly established. Okay, so line 2 it goes all over to B minus. Then B goes like this because it went like this before, so now it goes to B minus, and when we have B minus, we press this sensor. It tries to go here, and it doesn't manage because the last line is not, so it just ends on the end. But it tries to go here, and the second line is activated, so it shifts to the third line. And when it shifts to the third line, the pressure comes out of here, it reaches the third line, and it deactivates the first valve back to the initial position. Okay, and the third line, what we have is just B plus. Nice. When we have B plus, we have it here, and the third line now is activated, so it shifts to the fourth valve, to the fourth line on the third valve. You got it. And then the pressure comes out of here as it was in the beginning because it shifted back to this position. It fills the fourth line, it deactivates the other valve, and in the fourth line what we have is this movement without needing any activation, another activation, and then it has B minus. Okay, it reaches B minus, it goes through here, it tries to go there, and it manages because the last line is also activated. Then it activates the time delay, shifts this valve, and we go to A plus. That's it. That's what we wanted. And then the A plus sensor is activated, and we go to the state where if we wanted a continuous cycle, it would be triggered. And it is also possible to start again by just doing a unique cycle and pressing the button. That was it. I hope it was understandable. And I think the next video is going to be about electropneumatics because I haven't explained it yet, but we also could do a more complex exercise. I don't think there's new concepts, but I can make one with the waterfall method and emergency button and the, what's the name of it? I forgot the name of it. Oh, and the continuous and unique cycle. Just combine everything. If we need, we can do a really complex exercise with all the possible concepts. But that was it for normal circuits. I think now it's just electropneumatic ones. See you on the next video.